Hi guys, so recently a study was published in the US which suggested that young men are spending more hours playing video games than actually working. Now this suggestion did get a lot of people speaking about the idea. As with every potentially controversial study ever published, there are people who agree with this inference and those who disagree with it. Personally, I don't really agree with the study and feel that it may suffer from a causation versus correlation mix-up. I mean, people may actually be playing video games because they can't find a job and have free time to kill as opposed to not wanting to work in order to play video games. But you know, what do I know? This is just my opinion. I don't really want to discuss this study because you'll hear endless arguments about different points, but the idea of people not wanting to work in order to play video games did get me thinking about the idea of video game addiction. Although the idea of video game addiction may seem like a laughable one at first, there have been several incidences in which the death of gamers or individuals related to gamers have been attributed to video game addiction because, quite simply, the individual in question can't stop playing. Now, if you search for such incidents online, you'll probably find a few pieces about individuals who died after ridiculously long playing sessions that lasted in excess of 12 or so hours. When some read these pieces, they are often dumbstruck with regards to how a person may have died because either they feel they have engaged in similar activities and had nothing happen to them before, or that the person in question was stupid for not taking a break when they were clearly not feeling well after a while. The idea of video game addiction itself is one that is very contested. There are a lot of people who believe that it is a growing problem in society as gaming becomes an increasingly popular hobby, and then there are those who believe that such suggestions are ludicrous and that most studies into video game addiction are often in some way externally motivated, sometimes by a political motivation or perhaps by potential funding opportunities for researchers, which then often skews the results of these studies. So with all of this said, the question I'm really asking here is whether video game addiction really is a huge underlying problem within society, or is it just another problem created in order to further the aspirations of some people? In order to answer this question, it may be important to discuss the definition of video game addiction and its symptoms first. So what exactly is video game addiction? Video game addiction is defined as a compulsive disorder where a person needs to play a game or increase the amount of time they take part in gaming behavior to the point that it may actually interfere with their daily life. Although it's included in the DSM-5 as a disorder for further study, video game addiction isn't an accepted disorder as of yet, so there are a lot of suggested potential symptoms, some of which include gaining a pleasurable feeling from playing that cannot be gained from anything else, lying about how much time one spends playing, withdrawing from family and essential activities in life, performing poorly at work or school, experiencing irritability when not playing, losing sleep or skipping meals in order to play, constantly thinking about gaming, and then also spending significant amounts of money on gaming related items. Psychologist Joseph Hilgard indicates that the reason why gaming may be so addictive to some is that it makes use of the brain's internal reward system. Video games reward players for accomplishing particular goals, and in doing so may strengthen the brain's need to perform this particular task, as we enjoy performing tasks that reward us. If one takes to this concept and directly applies it to most gameplay situations, one could probably see that video games may really play on the brain's internal reward system. So with this definition of video game addiction, what it is and why it occurs, is it really a problem in society? One cannot deny that in some cases the inability to stop playing video games compulsively has ultimately resulted in the death of some people. The proof of this idea is there. But this isn't a fact that is only limited to the activity of gaming. There are several examples of people dying from the compulsive need to engage in various other activities that may also place some strain on the body, such as working out, which also plays on the brain's internal reward system. Look, I'm not saying that people can't get addicted to video games, but that it may not necessarily be the underlying threat to society that some academics and media outlets make it out to be. It's very important to remember that sometimes people engage in behavior that may fall under this very broad definition of video game addiction that has been provided, but may not in any way be addicted to video games. One really does need to look at the context of one's actions. There probably are people out there who can't stop playing, as nowadays people get addicted to everything. But in most situations, this is most likely not the case. Perhaps a good example of this context that I speak of I can find in myself, in that when I was at university, I often spent hours upon hours playing video games before exams, and the reason wasn't that I couldn't stop playing, but rather that I was using it as a method of procrastination in my aim to avoid actually sitting down and studying for the bloody exam. However, a few years later, when I moved away to a different university for my graduate years, I didn't have a medium to game for a while, and in that time my method of procrastination defaulted to reading A Song of Ice and Fire, the Game of Thrones book series, which ultimately nearly made me miss my thesis deadline date. In conclusion, I think that the biggest problem with this whole situation is that studies that skew findings to push a particular agenda create distrust in all research within a particular area. Even that which may be valid, and this is a major problem, as it seems that there may have been many instances in this particular area where people try to push certain agendas. Whether to believe the findings made in the above-mentioned study or any other related to video game addiction is something that one can only decide for oneself. The only thing that one can really hope for in terms of studies is that they are conducted in the most objective manner possible. It doesn't always happen, but one can hope, right? So, do you think that video game addiction is a massive underlying threat to society? Are you addicted to video games? Please share in the comments down below. And if you liked this video, please remember to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.